So for video number 2, we're gonna do a boundaries refresher. I'm sure you've heard boundaries as it's become quite the buzzword over the last maybe 10 years. But basically, um, if you think about it from the perspective of like a wall separates and creates a container for a room. So if you have a bedroom, typically you may have 4 walls, and that defines the space of your bedroom. When you think about a boundary, as it relates to you and another person, it is something pertaining to your time, pertaining to your physical person, pertaining to, there are several other types of boundaries. I have to find that list from my therapist, but basically they are limits that pertain to interacting with your physical person, your time, your thoughts, etc., and how it keeps you basically protected as a person. Your boundaries are to protect you, not to protect someone else or not to harm someone else. And they are to help you maintain autonomy as a person and also maintain healthy relationships, that part being the most important part. Sometimes, if you've struggled with boundaries, what you may find, especially if you're on the other side of having done the work of beginning to enforce boundaries, is that you may begin to like regress and gravitate to behaviors that you did in the past. For example, if you were a person that constantly said yes to attending events or showing up for someone else, that would be a time boundary that you would need to enforce, especially if it's something that you don't necessarily want to do. And what that means is you enforce a boundary as it relates to you relating to other people and you doing things for other people and or committing to things based on the time that you have available or the time that you feel like you can commit to a thing. If you don't have the capacity to do it, then you would say no. And something that God taught me very recently is that it's okay to change your mind. I have felt intense guilt at times when I realized that I'm not going to be able to do something that I said I would be able to do for a person, or do to a person, like doing hair or something like that, or showing up or being able to do something. I felt intense guilt about that, and that's because I struggled with boundaries across the board. I had found myself often committing to things that I didn't want to do. Found myself showing up for things I didn't want to do, and that was because I just didn't have healthy boundaries as it concerned my time, as it concerned what I was willing to do for other people. And that meant I showed up for other people more than I showed up for myself. And how those lessons have been coming back around for me is when I say that I can't do something, I don't go back on it. When I say that I'm not available, I don't go back on it just because of that need that I had to people please. And I also recognize that I have limitations, that there are just some things that I can't do. Like I cannot overextend myself sometimes, or not sometimes at all. I can't overextend myself at all. And so I want you to, and I'm doing this also. Sometimes we're presented with opportunities where we can, again, regress on a boundary. Evaluate and look at yourself, look at situations that are being presented to you. Are you regressing on your boundaries? Are you saying yes when you should instead say no? Are you overcommitting yourself to doing things? Are you doing things that you may not be ready for, say within the confines of a relationship? Are you taking on too many projects at one time? And think about like the mental health impacts those things have on you, And also, like, if you have a family, how you saying yes to too much and not saying no enough, how it impacts your ability to be present, not only for your family, but for yourself. Because for me, that was the biggest challenge. I was not being present for myself. I would say yes to do all these different things, and I'd be exhausted at the end of the day. And I think the biggest test for me was earlier this year. I had to begin studying for a test, which means I couldn't say yes to things. I literally had to block off my calendar. I had to send emails to say, no, I can't do this thing, or I'm not going to be available for these next several weeks. Even recently, God has been on me for nearly 6 months now to step down from some things. I finally hit that send button on one of those emails yesterday, and I need to do the other one. But this is because as I transition into a new season in my life, I need to make sure that I have the time and space for the things that are my priorities. Like going back to what I said in this previous video about accountability and intentionality. I need to be present and prioritize those things that I need to be intentional about in this season. And I need to hold myself accountable by following through, by doing what God told me to do. And a lot of times it's so easy to think that boundaries aren't biblical, but they are. Like, I think the biggest testament to boundaries being a biblical thing is Jesus taking time to get away from the crowds to go spend time with God. And if you don't have set time for you, you don't have set time for the things that bring you joy, you don't have set time for your family, or whatever the things that you may have to do during a daily basis, that could be a key indication that you've said yes too many times and that you could be on the fast track for a breakdown. And because I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that overextending myself, saying yes to too many things, how it put me in positions where I was not happy with myself, because I should have said no. I should have said no. And it was more so because of some of the traumas I experienced, as well as having this people pleasing thing, which ties back to those traumas, and how I felt like by me saying yes to everybody else and no to myself was being a good friend, was being a good sister, daughter, cousin, whatever title I had at that time. And now I realize it wasn't. I wasn't being a good steward of my time. I wasn't being a good steward of my energy. I wasn't being a good steward of the talents, gifts, and resources that God put inside of me. And because I had said yes to so many other things, that I couldn't do what God was telling me to do. What was that best yes? What was that best thing? That one thing that I should have been focusing on. In fact, that makes me think about how we we complain about not having time to do things, but that's because we've obligated ourselves to too much already. And the last thing I want to share and point out here is that because we can change our mind, things that were once a yes can become a no. So something that was a yes for you in one season will probably become a no in the next season, just because that means you have made space and room for God to be able to interrupt your day and help you to prioritize those things that are most important for you in that season. So yes, evaluate your boundaries. Make sure you're still in check with them. If you don't know what boundaries are, I can try to share the resource that my therapist provided for me for you to be able to check against and see if you need to work on any of those things. But most importantly, get in with a certified clinical therapist. For me, my therapist is also a believer, so that was very helpful this time around for me to be able to be successful. I've graduated from therapy a few times. I actually may start back trying to just do a quarterly check-in with her because I haven't seen her in almost like 4 months. But that being said, don't shun therapy. Therapy, honestly, was the best gift I gave myself last year, to be able to get things in proper order and just bring healing to a lot of hurting areas I had in my life. So have a great day. Hope you all will do this boundaries refresher, that you will check in with yourself, check in with your schedule, with those things that you have said yes to that are probably no longer a priority right now. And then if you've said yes to something that you need to now say no to, it's okay to change your mind.